Well, good evening out there. Well, the sun has slowly made its way down once again, and we can finally get comfortable and have a chat. My name is Eddie Booz, and this is Exit the Matrix. Now, throughout my life, I have traversed my share of rabbit holes, and like many of you out there, I have seen and experienced some things that I simply cannot explain. I invite you all to consider that this world may not be exactly what we've been told it is, and that maybe, just maybe, we haven't even scratched the surface of the absolute truths that lie before us. That being said, let's get into today's episode. I'd like to thank my guest for coming today, my pastor, Pastor Steve Bogden. How you doing, Pastor?
Doing fine.
Great to have you. Thank you so much for coming again. I appreciate you. It's been awesome to have you in the studio and doing these episodes and talking about all these interesting theories, interesting conspiracy theories, biblical conspiracy theories. So we don't got too long on this episode today, so let's jump right into it and get into some of those conspiracy theories that we were talking about. So I think we left off on the firmament last time. Let's get into CERN. Okay, so this one says that CERN is trying to reopen the abyss from Revelation. The theory is that the Large Hadron Collider, CERN, isn't just smashing particles. It's opening portals to other dimensions, possibly the bottomless pit from Revelation 9. Conspiracy is that CERN is trying to contact entities, fallen angels, and is symbolically linked to destruction. Some people note the Shiva statue from CERN when saying that, and they also like to reference Revelation 9, talking about how the key to the shaft of the abyss being opened and locusts coming out. So what do we think of this one? What do we think about CERN is trying to open the abyss from Revelation? What's your initial take on this, Steve?
All right. Well, as I understand it, CERN, the purpose of it is to cause atomic collisions of atomic particles and to see how they behave, and then to try to understand the quantum world. And so I'm not really sure where the idea would come from that it was going to open something up, a different dimension.
I've heard of this. I've heard this theory a number of times, actually, that CERN has got nefarious and Luciferian interests with doing this. You know what I mean? That's their motives, anyway.
Right. I know the statue of Shiva that's there was a gift from the Indian government, because there's a lot of Indian people that work there, a lot of scientists.
Interesting.
So it was a gift.
So nothing.
No.
So nothing on this one. CERN is good.
Well,
we're good on CERN.
Well, but let's talk about hell.
Sure.
Right. People, just like I said, people thought there was water above the firmament, because water falls from the sky. So obviously there's water up there.
Yeah, but how would it get through the firmament, though? Anyway, we're going backwards. We're going backwards. We're not going backwards. All right.
So, but when people saw things that were hot, they could tell from volcanoes.
Sure.
Heat escaping from the ground, geothermal, like hot springs and stuff like that. So they thought there was water up there, and they thought there was heat down below. In fact, a heat that was so intense that it would, if somebody fell in there, it would cause incredible suffing.
So
and
they
death.
thought so they equated this to hell, to a physical hell.
That's right.
Okay.
Now, the abyss in Revelation is not hell. It's not hot. It's not a lake of fire or anything like that. It's a prison where Satan is thrown for 1,000 years. It's called a bottomless pit where he's thrown, and he's not allowed to escape from there until the 1,000 years are over. There are other things escaping from the ground, like the locusts that come out of the ground. But that also that's not hell. It's not hot. It's not like magma or something like that. So biblically, in the Old Testament times, when people died, they went to what the Hebrews called Sheol, which was not a place of suffering or heat like we think of hell. It was just a region of the dead. It was a place of the dead. It's called Sheol.
Okay.
In the Greeks called it Hades. Okay.
So it wasn't Hades wasn't hell initially. That wasn't the Hades didn't mean hell.
Well, there's several words that apply to this.
Okay.
And so Sheol had a good side and a bad side. If you were a believer in God, a good person following God, then you would go to the good side of Sheol. It was called Abraham's bosom. And there you would rest with your fathers.
Okay.
And so, but then if you were not a good person, then you would be sent to kind of like a holding place for the souls. The bodies obviously are on the earth.
Right.
But this is where the souls go.
Okay.
And so when Jesus was here, he talked about another place. It was called Gehenna in Greek. It's called Gehenna. And that was the burning trash pile outside of Jerusalem.
Huh.
And he described it as a place where the flame is never quenched and where the worm never dies.
The flame is never quenched and the worm never dies.
Yeah, because the flame in this place outside the burning trash pile outside of Jerusalem, it burned 24/7 as they burned their trash that they threw out there.
Right.
It was kind of on the southeast corner of Jerusalem. It was the Valley of Gehenna. And so that was what Jesus described as a lake of fire. And so when Jesus died, there are scriptures that indicate that he went to Sheol and he preached to the people who were in Sheol. And then when he was raised from the dead, he brought them out of Sheol and took them into the presence of his Father in heaven. And so then heaven was populated with these people, not Sheol. Wherever Sheol was, it wasn't a place of suffering.
Huh. It was just a place of the dead or for the dead.
Yeah.
Where they were.
Yeah. And so, but then obviously when somebody dies, I mean, where do you put them? You put them in the ground, right? So it's down. But anyway, so Jesus populated heaven with these folks from thousands of years ago. And then now the Apostle Paul said when we die, to be absent from the body, like your soul has left your body, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So now we no longer go to Sheol, we go into the presence of the Lord.
Interesting.
Okay, and so, but then the bodies, when Christ returns to the earth, the bodies that have been buried or eaten by sharks or blown up by bombs or whatever's happened to our bodies, the bodies are resurrected and rejoined with the spirits. And then it says... So
the bodies are actually resurrected too. I didn't know that.
The physical bodies are resurrected.
Huh.
That's right. So heaven is not just a spiritual place. It's a spiritual and physical place. And it ends up being what's called the new heaven and the new earth, where God makes a new earth and heaven comes down to the earth and they're joined together.
Interesting.
And so, but then there will be also a resurrection of those who refused God, refused Christ, and they are also resurrected, and they're joined back together with their spirits. They stand before God, and then that's where the Gehenna comes in. The burning lake of fire does not exist right now. There's nobody suffering in a lake of fire right now. Not the devil, not demons, not people. The first two that are thrown into that lake of fire is the Antichrist and the false prophet. They're the first ones in it.
Interesting.
Right. And then after that, then there are other beings like death. Death is a being that is put into the lake of fire. And so it's kind of like a final destruction of everything that is evil everything that has plagued people, and then also it's described as a place for people who have refused the salvation that God offers.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's people that have never heard of God, never heard of Jesus Christ. It's not a place for them because they didn't know.
They didn't know, right?
God doesn't hold people.
I always wonder about that. I always wondered about that. The people who have never heard the name Jesus Christ in their entire lives.
Yeah.
And like I remember asking a friend of mine's parents that about 15 years old, and they were just, as a matter of fact, it could possibly be, nope, they're going to hell. Nope, they never knew Jesus. They're going to hell. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
I was like, wow, like that don't seem right to me, dude. Like,
no. Yeah. What kind of God would that be?
That's what I thought. It's exactly what I was thinking.
Right. It'd be like if you had a child, and you made up a rule for your house, and you didn't tell your child about it.
Exactly.
And then your child violates the rule, and then you beat your child.
Well, sorry. Well, hey, the rule was there.
Yeah, and how bad would it be if you sent your child to burn in a lake of fire for the rest of eternity?
Exactly.
That's not the kind of God that we know.
Exactly. Right? You're right.
Yeah. So heaven's going to be full of all kinds of people that never heard of Jesus. They're going to see Jesus for the first time when they get to heaven. Interesting. Yeah.
All right, cool. I like that. Okay.
So I don't know how we got all that from the Hadron
Collider. From CERN and the Hadron Collider. Well, hey, I don't know. But moving on. Okay, so the next one is, this one should be easy to tackle. The mark of the beast is DNA alteration. The theory is that the real mark isn't just a chip or a tattoo, it's genetic change. Accepting it alters your God-given DNA, making you non-human. Now, this is tied to transhumanism, CRISPR, CRISPR, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, or even vaccines. Mm-hmm. Some even say the Nephilim DNA is being reintroduced as well. Revelation 14 talks about those who take the mark are no longer redeemable. Perhaps they are no longer fully human. So what do you where does this land with you, Steve? The mark of the beast is DNA alteration. Mm-hmm. That the real mark isn't just a chip or a tattoo, that it's actually genetic change, and it could possibly have been maybe what we're talking about with these, maybe the vaccines or things along the lines of transhumanism.
Yeah, Revelation describes the mark as being on the right hand and on the forehead. So it's kind of specific on the human body. It's not like like it's in the entire body. And also, it's something that the powers that will be at that time can tell if you have that or if you do not have it. If you don't have it, they can make it really bad for you.
Right.
If you do have it, then you're kind of in good standing with them. But it doesn't describe it as being something that is in the entire DNA of a person. It's more limited to the right hand and the forehead. Which would be somehow identifiable. Now, we've thought that, when they came out with computer chips, they were implanting them under people's skin, that might be what's going on there, where they could read it.
Right, like walk up and they scan your hand and you can buy a loaf of bread or whatever, like a barcode on your hand or whatever.
Right. They've
been talking about this for a long time. Like you can just scan your hand for credit.
Yeah, and they can do that.
But that also goes into the central banking, the digital currency system and digital ID and things like that. Like that kind of goes hand in hand with these things. We're talking about being able to buy and sell using the mark. Right?
Absolute totalitarianism is what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's something we want to avoid. Just, note for the future,
Right. And they're conditioning people right now in the world to submit to that kind of a system.
Not only submit, love it. Mm-hmm. Love it. Right. Like, people who call themselves progressive and things like they are itching for this type of for this type of thing.
Right, and in the United Kingdom right now, in Scotland, England, and Northern Ireland and Ireland, they are arresting people right now for praying in their own homes.
I know. There was a lady who was praying to herself one day, like standing, she was in public or in a park or something like that. She wasn't even praying out loud, and they arrested her for it. Asked her, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm praying." "Oh, okay, well,
yeah,
off to jail with you."
Yeah, so they're teaching people that it's a good thing to submit.
Oh yeah, that's been a thing for a long time. In fact, the current education system we have was largely put in place in the industrial period of the United States, when they realized that they were getting these, they needed to prepare people for working an 8-hour day in a factory and to be able to be a drone. So, this 8-hour school day thing for kids, you tell me how easy it is for an adult to sit in one spot for 8 hours a day doing nothing but the same thing over and over and over again. And now you're going to expect a kid to do that same thing.
Yeah.
But they're training people. Not only are they training them to be drones, that was then. Now they're indoctrinating kids. Now they are your kids' parents. Unless you are teaching your kids values and instilling values in your children, they are gonna do it for you.
Yeah, that's why my 4 kids are homeschooled.
There you go. That's in my opinion, that's the way to go. The way to go is to be active, in their children and grandchildren's lives, and make sure that they're, not being, that their opinions aren't being, that their values aren't being instilled by their teachers, who have, may have come up in completely different, places and come from completely different, life experiences. So
right, my kids were raised on the edge of a wilderness on the south end of Big Sur on a big lake.
There you go. Beautiful.
And they had their schoolwork done within 3 hours, and then they could just run through the woods and play in the creek.
Right. Exactly.
And they all turned out fine.
Exactly. And exactly. So, Steve's kids are extremely successful. We'll go into what Austin and David do later on, but bodyguard service, military stuff. Extremely cool, successful family. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. Next one. All right, so the next one is, and I got a bunch of these, so we're probably not going to get to all of them today. So I'm definitely going to want to have you back for another episode. Maybe, in the near future here, we can get you in again and kind of go through some of these. Okay. So this next one says, and it kind of goes into a little bit of like the flat earth theory that we talked about before, but it's that the moon and the sun are newer than we think. They're post-flood. So theory is that some ancient texts suggest that the moon didn't exist until after the flood, or that it was added to Earth's system layer. Now, the conspiracy is that this was a controlled celestial event, possibly linked to judgment or timeline resets. Now, some use of the Book of Enoch or early rabbinic writings actually support this. What do you think?
Well, the scripture describes God as creating the sun, the moon, and the stars during the days of creation.
It does say the moon in Genesis.
It does, yes. And the moon by night. The sun gives light by day and the moon by night.
Oh, and it says that right there in Genesis.
It says it.
Let's put that one to rest then real quick then.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, and the flood happened after that.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is evidence for a worldwide flood. Every culture
has one, right? Every major religion has that story.
Yeah, has a story of a flood, whether it was a local flood in their area or if it's like a worldwide flood. Right,
exactly.
But a lot of times you have to read the Bible carefully.
Right.
Because sometimes the way the people of the ancient Near East expressed themselves, they would say something like it was huge, like it applied to the whole world or it applied for all time.
Right.
And it's hyperbole.
Gotcha.
And so, like it says, something for the whole world, but it's really a localized thing around their area and at their time. But that's just the way they express themselves. And they still do today. When Anwar Sadat was the president of Egypt, and when he had something going on, he commanded 10,000 tanks to go into the Sinai. Well, he didn't have 10,000 tanks. he was just expressing how he felt about it.
Right.
Like if I had 10,000, that's what I would send. So it's a Middle Eastern way of speaking.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How about this one? This one is that Nimrod was the first Antichrist. The theory is that Nimrod, builder of Babel, was a Nephilim hybrid who tried to become godlike. Some say he'll return as the Antichrist. Now, the conspiracy here is that secret societies use his symbols like obelisks and towers to honor his legacy and pave the way for his return. Now, a weird link here is that Nimrod is sometimes equated with Osiris, Apollo, or even Gilgamesh in esoteric teachings. What do we think about this? What's your first instincts on this? That Nimrod was the first Antichrist, and is that supported biblically that there were more than one Antichrist?
So what we see in the Bible is you have a person who is like the real deal, there is a person who will be the real Antichrist,
Right?
But then you have others leading up to it that are what's called a type of Antichrist. And there are several of these. And Nimrod was probably the first one because he organized the people and they were building a tower. They got up to about 70 feet tall, which was, amazing for back in those days. But he was the one that was organizing people and building a tower and saying, this is going to be our legacy. And so
he was doing that.
Nimrod, yeah.
I didn't know that. He was building the Tower of Babel. It was his. Interesting.
That's right. And then God didn't want that level of organization,
correct.
So he confused their languages, and now we have all these languages, and we've got the metric system and the standard system of measurement, and God kind of messed it up so that we couldn't
on purpose
work together. That
he jumbled things up so we couldn't understand each other.
Yeah, but then you see other ones too. Any dictator or like a ruler of an empire that we see can be viewed as a type of Antichrist. Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, there were some things about him. And then there was also this one that's described pretty well in Daniel named Antiochus Epiphanes. And he was one of the 4 sons of Alexander the Great.
Oh.
And when Alexander died, then his kingdom was given to these 4, and one of them was Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus IV, and he's the one that severely persecuted the Jewish people, and he's the one that went into the temple, the Jewish temple, and sacrificed a pig on the altar, which was unclean to the Jewish people. It was called the abomination of desolation. And Jesus talked about it. That was spoken of by Daniel the prophet, he says. Okay, and so that was one. Another one. And the Antichrist, the real Antichrist, will do something similar to that. Right at the midpoint of the tribulation, this tribulation 7 years long, at the 3.5 year point, there will be a desecration of the newly rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. That'll be done by that Antichrist. For example, Hitler also had many of the characteristics of Antichrist, and he's a type of Antichrist. And so there have been several of these really
throughout history,
really barbaric, really power-hungry people that have sought to control a group of people, and to take praise and worship for themselves instead of to God. Right. And so, you're right on track with old Nimrod there.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. So, okay. All right. So this is, so I like the, I have 2 more for you, and we only got about 5-10 minutes left at the most here. So this one is called The Garden of Eden was in Mesopotamia and may still be hidden underground. The theory is that Eden was a real physical place, possibly located at the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates in Iraq, and may be buried under layers of flood sediment or deep underground. The conspiracy is that archaeological digs in that region are restricted, and redirected because evidence of ancient pre-Adamic civilizations do exist there. Now, there's a little twist here, is that some link Eden to underground cities or even an entrance to the hollow earth. So, I mean, you know what's funny, though, is because going over some of these other ones with you already talked about how Eden was... We talked about how Eden was a real place that people could go to. So this is talking... I mean, this doesn't stray far from that. This says that Eden existed on Earth and that we could go and visit, you know? So that pretty much... That one's not necessarily... You know, that one's... We can pretty much put to rest and say, yeah, that one is good. We're good on that. Eden was a real place, maybe?
Well...
Possibly?
Yeah.
Probably?
There are four rivers that are mentioned where the Garden of Eden was.
Okay.
And two of them are the Tigris and the Euphrates, and we know exactly where that is.
Right.
The other rivers, people were looking and saying, well, we can't find these rivers.
Gotcha.
So we don't know where it is or if this is a real thing or not. But now they have underground radar.
Yes.
And they can tell not only where rivers are, they can tell where they used to be.
Okay.
And so they identified those two other rivers. And, of course, that garden, there was no reason for it to be there anymore when Adam and Eve were expelled from it.
Of course.
And so, you know, it's probably ceased to exist. But, you know, almost anything that's ancient is underground to us.
Right.
And so, as I said, I sit at breakfast with these three engineers. So I asked him one time, is the earth getting bigger? Because, you know, everything that's old is underground, right? So where's all this dust coming from that's building up all over the earth? And they said, what they said was that the mountains that stick up way high are coming down, and then the material from the mountains that blows around in the wind and whatever else, that's what causes everything else to come up. And so the Garden of Eden... you know, if it was 4,000 BC, it's probably under some sediment. Now, we don't need to dig up the Garden of Eden to find evidence of pre-Adamic civilizations. If Adam was in 4,000 BC, there were tons of civilizations in China and India and, you know, in Scandinavia, North and South America, before that time. And so the evidence is there, the archaeological evidence is there.
Is there... So, interesting. So, okay. So I'm going to move to the next one. And I have two that I'm really want to get to, but I know we don't have too much time. So let's just do this one really fast.
All right.
So hell is underground and accessible through ancient portals. The theory is that the bottomless pit or abyss is not symbolic, but a literal realm beneath the earth. And you already told me the abyss is not hell. Mm-hmm. But beneath the earth, possibly accessed through caves, tunnels, or volcanoes. The conspiracy is that certain military bases like Dulce or Mount Weather are actually guarding these access points, and that cultural parallels here. The Greeks had Hades, Hindus have Patala, and Christians have Tartarus, all underground. So what do we? So is like you talked about volcanoes and you know it being hot underground and stuff like that. So that's obviously where the idea comes from. But is that a practical or pragmatic theory that exists within Christianity, that it's a physical place that our souls actually go after we're dead, or that maybe, I don't know, that it actually exists physically, that we could that I could physically go and visit there now? Like if I were able to put a suit on and withstand the actual temperatures.
All right. Jesus told a parable about a rich man, and there was a guy by the name of Lazarus that was there with him. And Lazarus was very poor, and he just wanted to get a few crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. So the rich man died, and he went to this place of suffering, and he asked the Lord if Lazarus could just bring a little water to cool his tongue, and Jesus said no. He said, between us and you, he called it a great gulf that was fixed. So there is some kind of a barrier between where normal human people live and a place of eternal suffering. There's a gulf that's there, or a barrier that's there. So it's not a place that you could visit. But you could see why people in religions all over the world, if they wanted to encourage people to be good and not to be bad, and to say that if you're bad, you're going to go to a place of suffering. And what could be more suffering than burning? I mean, being burned really hurts.
Some of the worst pain I've ever felt were burns.
And so to think about burning forever with no escape, that would be a very strong impetus for somebody to, get their act together and be a good person. And then where do we notice that there is just spontaneous fire is underneath the earth, And of course, we speculate now what's in the center of the earth. They made a movie, Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Right.
But as far as knowing really what's down there, I guess, geologists would know something about it. But there's rivers of fire under the earth. It's hot down there.
Right.
I don't know how this fits in with the flat earth.
No, this is just this isn't that one. This is just the biblical one, biblical conspiracy theory. So
yeah. But anyway, people would then assume that for the place of suffering that it's going to be down.
Right.
Because that's where they see the heat coming from.
Sure. I gotcha. Okay. All right. Last but not least, and I think I want to just do a quick one on this, but we'll come back to it. Is that Vatican astronomers are looking for something not from Earth. And this theory is kind of wild, though. The Vatican runs one of the world's most powerful observatories at Mount Graham and a telescope nicknamed Lucifer. Did you know this? Mm-hmm. And then, so the conspiracy is that they're not looking at stars, they're tracking something returning. Possibly the sign of the Son of Man or a celestial being / entity. Now, a strange fact here is that they work closely with Jesuit scientists and rarely explain what they're observing. So what do you think that the Vatican astronomers are looking for something not from Earth? Are they searching for something coming back?
The Vatican is very curious about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be viewed as anti-science. So they want to, be viewed as people who are honestly inquiring into things. The Jesuits are some of the smartest people in the world. They really are well studied. And so they have a telescope. One of the telescopes at Mount Graham is run by the Vatican. And so they're looking, I think, probably into space, probably not for the sign of the Son of Man, but maybe looking for extraterrestrial life or some, to be on the cutting edge of what's out there that might be coming here. So the sign of the Son of Man goes like lightning from east to west. Okay. When Jesus returns, it's not like you're going to see him approaching like a comet or a meteor. He's just going to boom, all of a sudden be there all over the world, and everybody's going to see him at one time. And so
interesting.
And so that is more in line with the flat Earth, right?
I don't know. Why did we get this is all, we're talking about biblical conspiracy theories, and now it's gone total flat Earth.
But anyway, somehow he will be seen all over the world at the same time. And Jesus says in Matthew 24 that it'll be like lightning flashing from the east into the west. And so it's going to be really fast. It's not going to be like something you can see approaching, like a meteor or a comet through a telescope. It's just all of a sudden he comes from another dimension.
Right. So
and
I
then
always
boom,
thought
he's here.
Yeah, so I always thought he would come down on a flaming chariot or something along those lines, like people have talked about, and that it would be this. He would bring with him, fire and brimstone, and that would be this thing, But I mean, I don't know.
Well, all that it says about what you might see up in the air, you're going to hear the sound of a trumpet, and he says he's coming with clouds.
Coming with clouds.
So when I was a kid, I was always looking for a cloudy day, like, is Jesus coming today?
Interesting.
And then I realized when you look at his ascension, when he was ascending, it says that angels were surrounding him and receiving him. So I think the clouds are clouds of angels that come with him.
Interesting.
That appear with him when he appears all over the earth.
I like it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So I don't know what the Vatican's looking for, but
they're looking for something with a telescope called Lucifer, which is a little strange in my eyes.
Okay, Lucifer is the acronym for the telescope.
I mean, couldn't they have figured something else out?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, it's odd.
Yes.
It's really odd that would be used.
Yeah,
for sure.
man. Come on, that's a little that's a little on the nose for them telling us like, hey,
right,
something's not on the up and up behind these walls.
Right, but I think ever since Galileo, what the Catholic Church did to Galileo, they decided, we don't want to be those people anymore. We want to be in line with science,
Still. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the Vatican is about as trustworthy as the American government, but that's just me. So, but hey, so I can't thank you enough, Pastor, for coming in and joining me today. Pastor Steve Bogden, everybody, thank you guys so much for joining me today. And remember, you guys, we are all spiritual beings having a physical experience, not the other way around, you guys. All right, let me go here. My name is Eddie Booze. This is X the Matrix. See you guys next time.